About a week ago, I had to fill out this questionnaire, and it had me look back on the last decades, actually. It basically gave me an overview of what I have been doing ever since I started working. It also gave me an overview of things that have happened since I started working for myself. Also, what has happened since I tripped on a brick and couldn't stand on 2 feet anymore, and basically everything that followed after. Now, as you may know, my purpose in life is to have others be heard, seen, and understood. And if you make it more specific, then it has to do with two things. On one hand, I want the neurodivergent young ones out there to be seen, heard, and understood. And that means also have a chance in society to fully participate despite the challenges they are already facing. And hopefully that makes them see that they actually have unique skills, which could be and should be appreciated if being used in the right way. And I mean, used in the positive sense, of course. And then on the other hand, we have the business owners. And once the business owners get to realize that this is not about not knowing what to do and about being lazy, but actually about a communication issue. One party doesn't understand the other one. And since the business owners have those same things, as in not being heard, seen, and understood, how about if we can bring those two together? Now, when I was still working, I often ran into that feeling of not being heard, seen, and understood. Yeah, I mean, it started as early as when I was 9 months old. I was in the hospital, and at some point, I didn't even eat until my parents came along because, well, back in those days, you didn't get attention. You would lie in your own filth, and well, it was pretty sterile and well, it was not the best place to be. Of course, lots of things have changed ever since. And when I was at school, no one paid attention to what was happening. Yes, my parents did, especially my mom, but the teachers didn't. The parents of the children who were bullying me didn't. Of course, their children were perfect. But if that's so true and they were perfect, then of course the question is, why did I almost get killed at the schoolyard? And of course, no one took responsibility for that part. And moving on, it was about not understanding the teachers. And when I had to do exams, not knowing how to do so properly. And that was quite a challenge, I'll be honest. And well, I had to learn to simplify certain things because I see things from multiple angles. And that's basically what most neurodivergent people out there do. They see things from multiple angles, or they take things really literally, and they are like, okay, so what exactly do you want from me? So whereas most people, and mind you, that is going to change in the future. They already can see a rise of numbers of the people who are wired differently. So there are a lot of people out there who you say something and it's immediately understood. And I have to say, when I talk to my friends who are also neurodivergent, whether it's because they are gifted or are on the spectrum or whatever it is, we can follow one another. We can go back and forth, and when I need more clarity, I can just ask it. And we also understand that sometimes we need to ask on in order to get the right answers. Whereas when I would ask on, when it came to other people, they would be looking at me like, why are you making such a fuss out of all of this? And that's where miscommunication starts. So it has to do with patience, it has to do with clarity. And today we are going to talk about another topic which is correlated to it, or no, let's say it's related to it. So filling out that questionnaire, well, I don't like filling out questionnaires because they take up time and, well, do I actually see the result? But in this case, the result was there because one of the things that they kept asking about was what I have been doing and what I am doing at the moment when it comes to change for the people who participate in society. And well, since I want a different outcome for the neurodivergent young ones out there, so they don't have to experience the same thing that I did, or the same things that I did. And also because I can also see that the business owners on their end and the managers are struggling with how to improve things and how to be understood, not just in business, but also in their personal life. I was like, okay, I can see how one and the other actually matches. And here's the thing, whereas in daily life, I guide along a lot of those young ones out there. So I help them understand certain things, certain situations, why things do not work out the way they expect to. We also talk about trauma because a lot of people who are not understood, they get traumatized. And when you learn at a young age to not bother to even speak up because people don't understand you anyway, and when you get older, you still don't speak up, well, that's a bit of a problem. So because they don't speak up, others don't know they are dealing with something. And well, that's something that needs to change, basically, right? So maybe right at this moment, you have already heard some things that you are like, oh yeah, I recognize certain things when it comes to not understanding one another. Why does this person keep coming back to me? Or why do they never come back to me? And if they wouldn't come back to me, then I expect that things are going fluently, but actually they are not. So how? Why? And sometimes we also need to mirror certain people to recognize the behavior. And to give you one quick example, and I really love this example, is if someone doesn't listen to you and they say, okay, so you understand, and they are ready to walk off. When you say at that moment, no, I don't understand, and I'm not going to do it, then all of a sudden, that person gets stopped in their tracks. So, because you give a different answer, yes, you understand me, right? No, I don't understand you. Something shifts, especially if you're going to say, so no, I'm not going to do it. And that forces the other person to think. Now, I get it that for people who have never been heard, seen, and understood, it's so immensely difficult to actually start speaking up. Whereas you just want to get rid of the other one and be like, okay, I'll just, sure. And in your mind, you think, no way. But you do it to get rid of the person because, well, the person doesn't listen to you. Uh, so you basically can't help one another. And then it's easier to sort of just ignore that person. And, well, maybe you not, maybe you don't do anything at all. And the other person doesn't even notice it because they are busy with their own things. But that moment that you do start to speak up, something inside you will start to shift. Now, one of the things that I've heard a lot is, but I've always been doing this, so I cannot change. Well, I don't believe that people cannot change. Not if they really want it. And of course, there might be some things when it comes to the brain which makes it hard to change. But if people really want it, they really fight for it, things are going to change. And if I look back on, well, everything that has happened, especially since I tripped on that brick, I've been talking to rehab doctors, to orthopedic surgeons, of some who were in charge of my back and my vertebrae, others who were in charge of my knees, and again, others who are related to the mast cell disease, since my mast cells go into overdrive. There's a lot that's going on, and slowly I'm seeing how it works. And if you look at the reports from the doctors, they actually say, well, she is pretty curious. I don't know if that's a healthy thing. And the funny thing was that this week I talked to a number of doctors again. And one was on the phone, and it was a very short conversation. He told me basically what their conclusions were. So fortunately for me, the consequences of the hernia of the vertebrae were slowly diminishing. So there's progress visible in my back, which I'm very happy about. And there was no deterioration when it came to my knee. So I've got a torn meniscus and a torn ACL besides arthritis. But things were stable. So I'm doing the things that I should be doing. And I can tell you that there are so many subtle things that give me a reason to do certain things one way or another way. So like, for instance, I've got these big braces. They're called custom braces, CTI braces from Usher, and these ones are called extreme braces. So they are quite large. And I didn't wear them that much because when I was wearing them over my trousers, because there's no way I can wear them under my trousers. I mean, I cannot wear them when I'm driving the car because of the steering wheel. And well, I'm not going to lower my pants, if you don't mind, just to be able to put on those braces and then being able to walk. So I got a little something recently that goes across my pants and it keeps the braces in place. So going to the rehab doctor, we talked about other things, including my hands. And I said that I had stopped using my crutches because it's well, it takes its toll on my wrists and my shoulders and my elbows. And well, prior to that, I also had problems with the braces because they kept slipping and they don't slip anymore. But there are still circumstances that require me to walk with crutches, because what we are doing now and what I'm learning is to figure out what do I need to do in order to prevent myself from things happening which are like a real setback. So all of a sudden we were talking about braces for the wrist, which I'm going to use when I'm using crutches, so my wrists won't be hurt because I'm walking with crutches. So it's a little bit the other way around. But those are the things that when you talk about really exploring things and seeing how changes are made, which makes such a big difference. And it's taken me a long time to figure out. I mean, I'm getting older too. And the muscle strength I used to have isn't there anymore because of the lack of movement. Because, well, basically, I cannot do anymore what I was able to do because it took them so long to actually do both surgeries. Now, we can't change that anymore, but I can help the ones who are not heard, seen, and understood, and usually those are the younger ones out there, to actually be heard whenever something similar happens to them. And yes, we can also talk about people my age who actually experience things like this, or maybe people 10 years younger. You never know what basically happens in life. So, but it's paying attention which actually makes the difference. And this time, the doctor who was in charge of my knees and also had ordered a scan for my back literally said, well, you are very inventive, so please go on with what you're doing. And that was a huge compliment for me. And I was like, oh, you are seeing me differently nowadays because you see that I am connecting the dots. So that was amazing. Now, when we get back to the topic of today, then basically it's about tying numbers to visual and tangible outcomes. And what we're basically doing, or what I have been doing by filling out that questionnaire, was I basically traveled back in time. And like Brendon Burchard recently said, so he's one of my role models, he talked about looking back over the last 12 months to see what the wins were, what strengths we have gained, also what happened to the health, and there was one other thing. But it's about realizing that actually we see that we did get better, that we did get new skills, that we have learned to be more courageous. And if we start by saying, this is not going to work out, and so we don't do anything, nothing is ever going to change. Now, I can tell you that by the time that you can only walk on one foot and a few toes, and you cannot sit for a long time, you can't have anything in your lap, you cannot walk, you cannot get by on your bike. So I was in luck that I could drive the car because it was my left foot. But when you cannot do the normal stuff anymore, you will want to change. You will try everything out there in order to improve things. But also at some point, I didn't do it anymore because I sort of had given up. getting all these setbacks. But I knew what life could be like because I had had a different life beforehand. And that's basically what kept me fighting. And also, when my friends came over and I realized that I couldn't do certain things with them, I was like, okay, I need to push through. I just need to push through because this cannot remain at this level. I need to get back to where I was. Now, over a decade later, I'm not going to say that I am going to achieve what I could be doing before. I mean, a lot of decades have passed ever since. So, but what I can say is I can see that I can do things again and that I can improve. And if that means that I have to use certain aids like braces or crutches or braces and crutches, so braces for my wrist and then crutches, so be it. But if that means that I can go places again and I can walk with people to certain places, that makes a big difference. But it's always a little challenge. So when I went to that rehab facility, I was talking to the one who's in charge of the braces also when it comes to my hands. And I had made a mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake. I stepped in a certain way which caused me to sort of lose my balance. And that has to do with that my muscles and my tendons, they don't register and pass on to the brain what I'm actually doing. So as a result, the brain doesn't receive the accurate information and it doesn't send the right signal back to the muscles. I'm not sure which direction is not working, but I do know that in a neurological sense, it doesn't work the way it should. So see it like faulty wiring. And because I sort of lost my balance, my left leg sort of caved in. And then I got to talk to the person who was busy with my braces, and he said, "Oh, let's find a rehab doctor." So I walked with him, and he said, "Well, can you use the stairs?" And I was looking at him because I already realized I was in pain because of that one movement. So I went up the stairs, and then we walked, and by the time the pain was getting more and more. And by the time that we were downstairs again, I said, "Just look at my legs." The right leg was standing there firm. And the left leg, it was literally trembling all around. And I said, "This is the difference between my legs. The left leg doesn't know what to do anymore. And the right leg, well, no problem whatsoever." And that's because of all the things that have been happening ever since I tripped on that brick. When I had filled out that questionnaire, I think the next day or something, someone from school called me and she said, "Okay, we know that you are experiencing some difficulties when it comes to your health. So we want to help you out to make adjustments. So I can park the car basically at the train and I can use the elevator. Just a few things. And when I'm really tired, I get the chance to actually go to a place where I can just close my eyes and just unwind and, well, desensitize. And that way I can recharge again and then go back into class." So when I first had registered, they sent me this questionnaire and they said, "Well, if you have a problem with this, that, and the other, then you need medical information." And I was like, really, at my age, is that still necessary? So when she called me and she said, we're going to do this for you, I was so happy. So I asked her, so are you calling me because of the questionnaire? And she said, no. I said, oh, that's funny because I just filled it out. She said, but since you were talking about it, and I still had to figure out if I needed to do some sort of exam in order to be accepted, she said, will you do me a favor and call one of the teachers? So I had spoken a couple of months ago with one of the professors over there, and I reached out to her, told her about the phone call I had, told her about the questionnaire. And she said, oh, that's funny. I was just about to call you so we can get together. So tomorrow we'll be actually on a Zoom call or on the Teams call over here. We, for some reason, do Teams because Zoom is not trusted. And well, if I am correct, then the questionnaire by itself was filled out in such a way that they already had to prove that they needed to know if I was capable of doing this education. So it's a master's degree, which is expert by lived experience, and that's going to be 2 years. And well, there's a lot involved. Now, going to the numbers, I felt like, okay, it was as if I knew that I wanted, I want to help out the neurodivergent people out there. So both the young ones, but also the ones who are older, and quite often they start working on their own because they are not understood themselves. So there are a lot of business owners as a result of it. And for me, actually seeing what I've been doing showed me like, oh, but hang on, I have been busy looking at things, researching things, whether it was because I was planning on going to San Diego, or because I'm using certain posts and forwarding those, but also other things. And I realized, oh, there's more actually that I have done than I was aware of. So in this case, I could see by filling it out what actually had been the progress. And it was literally by traveling back in time that I realized, oh, actually, I'm doing quite good. And I didn't realize that this was actually happening. Now, let's go as in travel in time to the future. So I've been thinking about this, like, okay, so one Monday I can do things from here, and the other Monday I need to travel to a place which is, I think, like an hour and a half driving, if it's not more. It could be close to 2 hours, and in traffic, in rush hour, it's going to be like 3 hours. So I already decided that the evening before I'm going to go there, stay in a hotel, and then at least I can skip rush hour. I thought that I would be able to just do my thing, have some food, and then drive back. But as it turns out, there will be 7 weeks that I'm actually having training back here. So I basically have to well, it's going to be like 3 or 4 times because it's the other week, right? That I have to drive back in order to be able to attend it. And what is it? It's about how to run a foundation and how to, well, what it means for board members in order to run a foundation. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that moment at the beginning of the year that I said, I'm going to become the go-to expert for neurodivergent people. And then all of a sudden I was talking to a friend, and then we were talking about, hey, there's the expert by lived experience all the way over there, a number of hours driving. And before I knew it, and it was around the same time, I was talking about setting up this park, which I have wanted to do so for years. And now it's become more concrete, and it's like, okay, I'm going to set up the hub for neurodivergent so they can come together and be understood, and they can be guided by other ones who already have more experience in life because they have lived through it. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I also realized that this is where I want the business owners and the managers, or at least the adults who work with the young people, to come over to. So they not only learn themselves how to be heard, seen, and understood, but they can also give the younger generations a chance to become a meaningful part of society, and basically help out their business too. But they need to know how to communicate better. So I was like, okay, yeah, I've always seen myself walking in the streets of, say, for instance, Chicago, and work with the business owners, because I know for a while now that I want to get the Steam Power Collective up and running. So those are going to be the founders of the Park of Purpose, Power, and Perspective. But it works basically from two sides. And when we talk about numbers versus something tangible, the numbers are related to how quickly or how can I get the business owners to find me. So the numbers are related to the number of people who are subscribing to get the yearly coaching from me. And of course, well, with them subscribing there's a lot more involved, which is related to, do I actually have the time to do so? How does that influence, for instance, my traveling back and forth to the university? So one of the things that I realized pretty quickly was, if I am going to do daily micro meetings, which is the plan, and I was like, okay, what time am I going to do this? Because it's international. I also realized that it could interfere with the time that I would be at Windesheim University, because at some point I would need to step away for half an hour in order to be able to talk to the people and then do certain things. So things were already, well, not that so necessarily interfering with one another, but I had to find a way to make them work together. There were other things too, which I was thinking about. And what happened was that in the last couple of weeks, I have been working on another project as well. And once I get hyper-focused, I basically just keep on doing whatever it takes. I really have to tell myself, okay, now go get some sleep. And even then, it's hard to wind down. And you might have noticed that lately I haven't posted that much on Instagram. and I probably should do it because it might actually help me to wind down. And the reason I haven't done so is because it can also work in the opposite direction, which is keeping me awake. But being so hyped up about the project that I'm working on, well, basically, sleep is a little bit hard nowadays. And of course, that has consequences later during the day. And thinking about all those things that I have been doing, I was like, I'm basically creating my own dream board right now. I'm researching things, I'm investigating things. How are certain things going to work out? How am I going to do this? And actually, I was juggling with numbers. I was juggling with finances, things that I have to think about. Like, okay, I have to pay for the school, of course, but also other things are going to require certain payments from me. And like a couple of months ago, I had registered to work on my funnel and have the professionals work on my funnel too. And I had been working on it, but I hadn't necessarily used their courses, their training. So there are a lot of courses and training I can look into. And I had been working on, okay, what's my outcome? How do I want to talk to people? What's my promise? All those kind of things. But literally listening to the training, I hadn't done that much. Now, we don't have the actual training sessions anymore. And I know that they won't look at the funnel until next month. So that's kind of ideal for me. But I had promised myself that if things would be working and by making sure that I would work on that funnel. So basically to get people to find me. So if the business owners know what I'm doing and they stand behind the idea of getting those neurodivergent young ones to be able to get a place in society or in their business. So the business owners are being understood by the employees, but also the employees are being understood by them. And that can only lead to growth. The moment that people understand one another, they talk about one another, they get to inspire one another, then beautiful things happen. And if you say, well, I'm not sure about that, then just see what happens when the opposite happens, when someone comes in and tries to take over control and does not listen to the people who have always been there. Well, once you see that sliding down, then you know it can also work the other way around. So this is not just about rewriting your inner story, it's about much more. And I know that what I have, especially when it comes to the micro meetings, can really work. I've got this handout, which shows what the business owners need to be thinking about when it comes to communication. Because, well, we don't get taught how to communicate at school, but there's also a sheet for the employees in order to make sure that they understand one another and they are aligned. So knowing that I worked on both those things, I was again like, okay, yeah, so in order to get that hub, in order to get people who want to be on the board of the foundation, I need to get out there and people need to be able to find me. And then I was like, but yeah, well, we're talking about dry numbers. And it was like I could see what I needed to do technically in order to actually create that funnel. I know how to write the emails. I know what the pain points are, and I know what my promises are. And I can actually see the people walking with me, whether it's in Chicago or through Europe or actually at that park. And if everything goes according to plan, then there will be lots of parks all over the world. So if one basically works, then we can expand more and more and more. So it's not just about a place where neurodivergent people can find others who understand them. It's also about learning and being able to work with one another. And well, there are more things like a hospice for young children, for children. It's a children's hospice, low footprint when it comes to the environment. And somehow those things seem to interact with that other project as well. And it was like, oh, this is getting interesting. So I may not see too much progress on one end, but on the other end, something is shifting. So, how does this work? And so I talked to, in this case, Brendan AI, and I said, I know about block time. I know about goals and milestones. But the thing that I'm missing is the whole visualization thing. And so basically what he said is, well, you need to make it tangible. So it's not just about seeing the beginning and the end, but you want to see all those steps in between. So when you look at the numbers, you basically make them into images, into events. So when we talk about people subscribing, it's basically about visualizing, okay, so I see people who are interested, who are calling other people like, hey, check this out. And then I see us walking wherever it is. But I can also see the effect it has on the other younger ones and how they actually experience things. So first, like I said, it was the young ones I've been helping out on a daily basis, and there was the coaching of the business owners, which I don't do on a daily basis because they simply don't have the time for it. That's why we want the micro meetings. That's what we want to introduce, because then we actually keep one another accountable. And now it's like, hey, one can learn from the other. So one needs the other, but the other also needs the one. So I'm like, okay, I can actually see that. And my question to you is, when you think about your prolific quality output, so basically about the numbers, can you actually see what it means for your business, but also for your life? Or maybe you don't have a business, so can you see what it means for your life if certain things start happening and you start working on those on a daily basis? So it's not just about making the time for things, it's about you making the time for things, not because you have to, but because of the focus. So I've been literally focused, as in the hyper focus, on that one project, because it's like I'm literally already walking around in that place that's linked to that project. And it's so different from, like I said, literally just numbers. There was like, okay, if I can actually link all those milestones together and literally see how it interacts, how those elements interact with one another, then something else is going to happen. So that's what I've been thinking about lately. And it's something that I want you to think about too. So when it comes to rewriting your inner story, it's about what do you tell yourself? Do you tell yourself you're not good enough, that you can change, that you're not worth it to be heard, seen, and understood? Or how about if you can tell yourself, but I am worthwhile? Because apart from if people are listening to you, there are always people who, especially the younger ones out there, who are listening to you for guidance. And so others who say are in a different league, they might not look at you and they might not see what you're worth. And they might actually not be in a different league. They might actually just be in a different stage of life, or they might be busy with completely other things in life. So they are not focused on what you are doing. And so they don't pay attention to you. But there are always people who do look at you and who do need your guidance. So if you don't do it for yourself, do it for them. And then when you start doing it for them, then just think about what the change is that you are creating. So we don't want you to think badly of yourself and not want to change. And as a result, also, well, if you are in this negative spiral and in this loop, then you're not going to inspire the next generation, are you? And we want you to inspire others as well. But that means that you believe that you can actually inspire others and that you have something worthwhile to share with others. So I really want you to start writing things down, things that you maybe would like to do or know that you're good at, but you haven't really started doing it because you don't believe you can either inspire those people, or you don't think people are going to listen to you, or you're looking at the numbers and you're already like, oh, I've got so many other things to do. So let's not even go there. But by literally looking long term and by seeing what you have actually accomplished, and maybe by sharing a few things with others, you might be able to make that difference. Well, actually, you are going to make that difference as long as you keep on going. So it's not about pushing others, but it is about you thinking about what you're doing. So what are your actions? And also about reflecting on what you've been doing and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And, when it comes down to it, we also want support. We always want support, whether it's because you want to brainstorm with other people or because you want an accountability partner. It really helps to have support. And especially that part when I talk about brainstorming, the other one might not even know about it, but by you sharing your story and your plans and your project, you already make a difference. So go write about that. Just think about it, what it is that you know you can do, but you didn't really dare to give it too much thought and too much time. And when I talk about jumping in the timeline, so basically time traveling to the future, it's important to think about how much time do you actually have to really set things up for things that you want to do later in life, or things you cannot do anymore later in life. And Well, that's not to mention that we don't know how much longer we do have. And that's why it's so important to really enjoy every minute that you have. And sometimes that's not easy. I know I'm in circumstances where it's not easy. But we have to think about what can we change in order to change those circumstances. And it might not happen straight away, but by actually visualizing what it will look like, then all of a sudden certain things again can connect with one another, and then, oh, hey, actually things are happening. Now, if you are like, okay, Lexi, I heard you talk about rewriting your inner story multiple times now. It's about the way that you talk to yourself. So it's about your mindset, what you believe, what you do, the negative thoughts, to actually change that to positive ones, to actually have an outlook on life and what it is that you want for yourself and also for others. Then make sure that you go to the link in the description, which is, in this case, it's mikejabi.ladylexi.com/ in capitals RYISC. Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge. I always have to literally see it in front of me in order to say it. So again, click on the link. If the link is not there in the description, then hit me up. Leave a comment and say, Lexi, you were supposed to put the link in there. And, get your challenge, get working on it for a week. So you have 3 days for each day to actually go through the stuff. And, well, if you want more, then find me, because I believe that if we get together and we form that group, the founders group, that's going to make a difference for the neurodivergent young ones out there. You do not know how to actually get a degree because their exams are not going the way they should. You do not know how to get an internship and then actually be able to finish it. Well, then we get a very big part of the younger generations who basically don't want to be there anymore because they don't see any perspective. But if we can do the opposite and we can get the younger generations excited, and if that means that we need to work on ourselves in order to see them change, well, isn't that worthwhile to see that if we invest in them, it not only influences the following generations, but actually it influences us too. So it's leading to mutual growth. So, well, having said all of this, just look back on what you've done and give yourself a compliment for what you have achieved. And then decide on that one thing that you want to do in order to make an adjustment that's also going to affect someone else. It's the little things that can actually make big waves. But it starts with you deciding that you are worth it and that you can actually make a difference. Let me know in the comments what you're going to do.